I'm Eric Shepard, and this is Regarding Music. I'm here with David Eguiguren, who's a St. John's, Newfoundland-based piano player who's studying music at Memorial University. He also runs a fairly happening side hustle, which is focused on doing photography and videography. David, thank you so much for coming on Regarding Music. I'm really looking forward to our discussion here today.
Me too, obviously.
Before we dive in here, why don't you just take a second to introduce yourself and talk a bit about your work?
I'm David Eguiguren. I'm from Ecuador originally. I was born and raised in Quito, which is the capital. I kind of started my music when I was like around 4. I was in a little school, and one of the profs there was also, he just happened to be a percussion teacher at the National Conservatory over there. So he kind of started me to play marimba, and then he realized I really, really liked it. So I just kind of kept playing. And anyways, I just kept playing for years. And eventually, I joined a conservatory. I was on a little bit of a higher level, let's say, music studies. But unfortunately, in Ecuador, there's not too many opportunities for musicians. So I decided to leave the country when I was 18. And I came here to Canada, to Newfoundland. And it has been a great experience. I started with just studying piano here, and now I'm doing a lot more composition as well, and my little side business, as you said.
What have some of the differences been between like doing music in Ecuador and music here? You mentioned some of the opportunities, but I mean, like 18, moving to a different country to pursue music, I reckon that must have been a unique experience, and one that's kind of, outside of my wheelhouse in terms of, like I've never had to pack up and leave to go somewhere to do what I wanted to do in the same way. What was that like?
Leaving your country is always impossibly hard. Like it's too hard, most of the times. Some people have no problem with it. I had problems, obviously, which I think is like the most normal thing. But I think if you really, really like what you do, leaving your country is obviously terribly sad, but at least you get to do this one thing that you really, really like. And in my case was playing piano, doing music. So I left my country and I came here, and well, as you said, I found a lot of opportunities. I found a lot of friends. I found like a super open community, which is really hard to picture when you are in your original country, let's say. It's really, really hard to kind of figure out, understand how life is going to be in a new place, right? So when you arrive, everything is kind of like a surprise. Everything. So I was like, wow, people here are really, really nice. People here want me to play the piano. People here want me to sing in a choir. People here want me to do a lot of things, which I thought it was great. And that's the reason why I still really, really enjoy living here as a musician.
You've touched on something here that I've had this sort of discussion so many times, both on this podcast and offline, that like, community, like networking, making it so that like, okay, I'm genuinely friends with these people who, such an important and like underrated thing in music. I feel like so often there's a focus on like, I need, a certain level of skill, musical development, which is critical. Like you have to have that. Like you need to be a good musician, like as a baseline for people to, want to work with you on stuff. But I mean, not to quote like the finance bro meme too much kind of thing, but like your network is your net worth, right? Like it's such an important thing that I feel like is, it's not really taught. It's not really taught. I mean, like for me, like the business background, business school, like, I had classes on like, how to have a good handshake kind of thing. Right. But like, it's such an important thing that I feel like doesn't get talked about enough. From like doing your sort of like photography business on the side, like what does that like entail? Like what sort of work have you done with that?
It was pretty funny. My cousin wanted to buy a camera, but he didn't have the money to buy the camera. So I was like, okay, I'm going to buy the camera for us. And then whenever you have money, you pay me the other half. So I was like, sure. I bought the camera and then realized I liked it too much. So I did not let him pay the other half. It was my camera now. But then I realized, like, well, those days I was just going out, taking some pictures, doing whatever, not for a business or anything. I was just doing it because I wanted. And I was like, wait, I am in a music school, and people in music school need headshots. Musician needs, like, we need headshots, It's really important. Especially as a musician, you gotta kind of sell a little bit of your image and who you are.
100%.
So I was like, wait, what if I start a little little photography business? So I got, I think, 4 of my friends, one of which in fact was my cousin, who I did not let him pay me the other half for the camera, and I was like, who's not even a musician, and I sat him on a piano, and I was like, pretend you're playing piano. So I started taking pictures of him, with permission, and eventually I realized this could actually be really, really good. So once I did a few sessions with people, I started getting a little bit more comfortable on how this dynamic of taking photos for other people work. So I started taking more and more photos for people, and I eventually became kind of popular in the university, because I think I'm the only person around that does photos kind of professionally.
Yeah.
Especially who is a student, someone who's a student. They can obviously go pay another photographer from town, but I think I'm the only music student who is a photographer.
I think that there's a lot of like really interesting discussion points to unpack there, but I think the first one for me is, so often I feel like musicians, we feel like the only way that we can create value, for ourselves, like financially, or, for other people as well, in terms of like, okay, something that I bring to the table is like through the musical work we do. But I mean, there are lots of things sort of like surrounding music, and like a podcast like we're doing now, or like a photography business that is geared towards musicians, that it's like, okay, you take musical knowledge that you've developed from your experience as a musician, and then combine them with skills you might have in like another area or another niche, and then sort of merge them together to create something that's tailored to musicians. That I feel like those sorts of avenues are often like overlooked, or people don't necessarily connect the dots. Like they might have the skills, or like the interest in photography and the interest in music, but like not the idea to kind of put them together in a way that creates an opportunity for yourself.
I can only talk from my experience and from my, let's say, combination of photos and music, but one kind of really needs the other. People need to record videos for auditions. People need to take photos for their websites. People like their I don't know, their like teaching website or whatever.
And there's always something really nice about just like having really crispy photos for an Instagram, like even if it's that simple kind of thing, right? Like,
that's true, completely true. Even if you just have a musician Instagram account, and I don't know, it's like you finally graduated or whatever, so you just want to have a nice memory of that. It's a useful thing, and then you can use those headshots, for example, for, I don't know, something professional, or just like, I don't know, you're going to be playing in a program and this is the one that you send, or whatever.
How has doing this photography business, like the networking, the different type of work, like how has that like influenced or impacted your work as a musician?
I think it's basically, it's kind of, we're playing like the same game, It's just like, I gotta go meet people so they can, in photography, I gotta go meet people so I get recommended to other people. In music, it's basically the same thing. You gotta meet other musicians so you get recommended to other musicians for doing one thing, for doing another thing. And I think the photography really taught me that, getting to know a lot of people and starting like a little, like kind of widening my circle a little bit. Got me to, I don't know, singing more choirs and stuff like that,
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that's super interesting, because I feel like between music and business there are a lot of transferable skills, like regardless of whether you're a pianist and I'm a choir guy, right? So many transferable skills in both of those things, because at the end of the day, you do, as a musician, you do need to create value, both for like audiences, other musicians you work with, right? Like people, especially something like choir, which is like really a team sport. Like you have to get like other people to do it. Like I can't just, if you're a pianist, you could go and just like, play piano on your own, but like you can't really do that in choir at all. You have to create value in some way, to get people to engage with you. And the other thing as well is like every musician is a brand. Right? Even if you're not like out here performing, doing it in the like quote unquote like professional sense of like making money and charging customers to come to shows, but like you're a brand with other musicians, right? Like you have a reputation to manage, regardless of whether you're, you know, a first year university student or you're like a professional out in the world, right? Like you have a reputation to manage that, like, you know, people develop ideas about you and working with you based on, you know, their experiences with you, in the same way that, you know, people develop opinions about a business based on their interactions with a company. Yeah. Right? So in what ways, like, has doing this, like, I guess, like, helped you shape your image as a musician?
You know, that's kind of complicated, because I think ideally when you have, for example, in my case, something on the side, it's important for you to make sure that people know you as both. Yeah. As the photographer and as the pianist.
You want to make sure that your business on the side is successful and that you're getting lots of opportunities, but like you don't want to like pigeonhole yourself into something that is the side hustle.
Exactly.
What are things or thoughts that you like either things you've done or like thoughts you have about doing that, right? About making sure that, okay, you know, I want people to view me as, you know, a professional musician going down that path, and not like just like a full-time photographer, but like also promoting your work as a photographer at the same time. Like,
you know, it wasn't in my case too hard, because again, I can use the material from the photography and especially the videography for my musicianship. You know, I can just record a really, really, really nice video of me playing like a complicated piece or whatever. So in that way, I am self-promoting twice.
Right.
Twice in one video or twice in whatever, you know? It's kind of, in this specific case, I think it was simple because both skills are very, very, they get like one really easily.
Yeah, I think you touched on something interesting there about like developing complementary skills. You know, one of the things that I have found is like, I think so often, you know, we're focused on, just as musicians, we're just focused on, you know, developing as much as possible as a musician without looking at, okay, what are some of the other ways or like ancillary skills that might be like, you know, for lack of a better word, like a force multiplier in terms of, you know, amplifying the musical skills that you have. I mean, for you, it's been photography, which is great, but I mean, I can think of, you know, so many other ones like networking skills, you know, people skills, and finding like opportunities kind of like on the cusp, on like the periphery of music that could like differentiate you in a way that is unique.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, honestly, if you think hard enough, you can connect anything with any other thing. You know? Like, I'm sure there's like a chef over there that's like, yeah, I only cook here musicians. You know?
Right. It's like I only file taxes for musicians.
Exactly.
Actually, I said that as a joke, but like I feel like that could be like a super good niche. Like, you know, freelance musicians who like run a music studio and like know nothing about taxes, and like they have to like, no, actually that'd be a great side business.
And I mean, obviously, you're completely and absolutely, it's a good idea to just focus on one thing instead of having several things. Like, you're not obligated to have a side hustle, obviously, you know? But in my experience, again, the benefit of having, in this case, this little side hustle has been getting to know more people.
And I also think that there's again, for lack of a better term, a paradigm shift that I've sort of realized over the past year or so, and like from talking to a lot of other musicians, is that, you know, it's the way to think of developing has a lot less to do with like competing against other people. Because I mean, like for one thing, like I actually know very few people who are doing like the same things as me or trying to do the same things as me. So like you can't even necessarily always compare yourself to other people in that regard. Like, it's not healthy to do so, even if you could. But instead of saying, okay, how can I, you know, compete and fight and win, versus, okay, what are the ways that I can create value, both like for audiences, for other musicians you work with, for people you teach, for people who you, I guess, like work for, right? Like as a chorister, like in, you know, the choirs that you sing with, for example, where you're not conducting. How can you bring more to the table? And sometimes the answer to that is, developing musical skills, and then sometimes the answer to that is, doing things like you've done with the photography business, or doing what I've done with the podcast, right? Seeing, okay, what are ways sort of on the periphery of music that, I have skills in something else, that we can kind of merge them together to do something that nobody else is doing.
Obviously, the entire process of doing this is really complicated, and it takes a lot of effort. You gotta put a lot of hours, and you kind of have to be passionate and everything. But as it has been said a million times also, the hardest part is just like starting, you know? Once you start and you kind of get the ball rolling, and if you realize you like what you're doing, then you're really likely just gonna keep going. And then you already started it. You went through the hardest part. So once you go through that, the rest is basically just like you already started gaining experience,
I feel like that's true with any business, like pulling the trigger, saying like, okay, like I'm going to commit to doing this, and like committing publicly to doing it, I think is one of those things that's like, it's hard at first to say, okay, I'm going to, rebrand myself as, doing this thing. But once you do that, like it kind of in a way keeps you honest, because once people start to know, once people start to know you as a photographer or me as a podcaster, it's really like you kind of you can't go back then.
When I just started the photos, even before I started taking photos for other people, I realized that I had no posts in my Instagram account. So I was like, okay, I might as well just like take a few photos with my camera and then just put them on Instagram, and see what happens. And then I was like, wow, I like this. My Instagram looks nice. The photos, I think they're okay. So then I just kept doing it, and it has helped, because social media is magically good. It's like incredibly good.
So Dave, if I'm a music student, right? I'm an undergraduate music student, and I want to start, filming, taking pictures, becoming a content creator, if you will, and putting some of the work that I'm doing out there. What ideas do you have for them in terms of like creating better quality videos and photos?
Well, first of all, I think this is really, really important, and I don't see too many people talking about this. Whenever I, for example, buy a new camera, I try to get to know my equipment perfectly, as much as I can. Mm-hmm. As much as I can before doing anything else. Because I think that if you really know how to use what you have, you're going to create really good quality content. For example, if I do a video of me playing the piano, but I have the most expensive camera ever, and I am a great pianist, but if I don't know how to light a scene, it's going to look terrible. And it's just not going to have the same impact as if I had learned how to use what I have.
Right. Like you might be better off like filming an Instagram reel of you practicing like on your phone with good lighting than you would if you had a really nice piece of equipment with, that you didn't know how to use.
Exactly. So I think that's one of the first things. Like you really got to just know what you can do, what you can't do, how to do it better. And then once you reach a point, you maybe try and, I don't know, upgrade, buy a new camera, get a new mics, whatever.
Yeah, I feel like as well, like one of the things that I found after, being a musician who's kind of becoming a content creator, is, you don't actually need like all that much equipment to start out kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
like,
no, absolutely not.
Starting out and being like, okay, I need, like a phone tripod and like my iPhone, and I'm going to film myself practicing. Like, it's way better to, I feel like, start with that than it is to go out and like buy a bunch of stuff that you don't know how to use and then be like, okay, what am I going to do now? Versus, just sort of starting that process and deciding that it's like something you like and want to continue doing.
In worst case scenario, the worst thing that can happen is that after like, I don't know, if you kept doing this and then after 5 years you have a crazy setup, you look back at your first video and whatever and you say like, wow, that looks horrible. But if it wasn't because of that first video, you wouldn't be where you are 5 years later.
I feel like that's like such a good thing, both for like, being a content creator, quote unquote, right? Like, it's like you should go back, like even with this podcast. This is episode number 20, which is a bit of a milestone, hence the first video that we've filmed. So a bit of a plug here. You can watch it on YouTube as well. But going back and looking at like the first things that you did and being like, man, like if I knew what I know about it, or if I had the equipment, or if I had the lighting, or if I had the setup, or, like that's kind of good because it means that you improved. And it's the same sort of thing in like, with the music side of it. I feel like conducting is one of the things that like for like applications and stuff, like you need footage, right? You need footage of yourself running rehearsals, conducting stuff. And like, if you don't like look back at the stuff you did like a year ago and cringe and think, oh my God, I talked way too much. I was really awkward. The ideas I had were bad kind of thing. Like if you don't do that, it means that like you didn't come far enough.
The thing is that happens also with, if you're just a musician and music is the only thing you do, that also happens with your own music. You could see a video of you playing the piano or the guitar or whatever when you were 7 years old and you had practice for like 3 hours and you were like, oh my God, I sucked, But again, if you hadn't started there, you wouldn't be where you are now.
Yeah, but I feel like, especially in the sort of, photography, videography, creating content for any content creator, I guess, but like, this is regarding music, like we're talking to musicians here. It's way worse to like go out and be like, okay, I'm not going to start filming myself performing and sharing my music more publicly because you feel like you don't have a good setup or a suboptimal thing. Like that's terrible, guys. Like everyone's got a phone. I feel like if you're a musician, like, you should do that. Cause I mean, like the stuff we do is inherently public. It's like, if you think of like, okay, I'm going to go and do, a graduate recital or like an end of year recital in an undergraduate program. Like, how is that different from like, okay, I'm going to go film myself playing that music and putting it on the internet? Like it's really the same thing. Only one is just like kind of at scale, but like, I think it's terrible for people to be like, okay, I don't want to do that, or I feel like I can't do that because I don't have the equipment. It's like, if you've got a phone and like 2 books that you can stack your phone up against kind of thing, like you can do that.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, even if you're not going to put it, I don't know, on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, at least I'd like to have like a little record of the things that I've done, just so when I'm older and whatever, I have played the piano for a lot more time and I'm better, I would like to see how I improved, over time. See what I was practicing back then, and oh my God, it took me a year to learn this piece, and now it would take me a month,
Yeah.
So I think it's just good,
Yeah. So Dave, you've taken photos for like a lot of musicians. I mean, you've taken photos for me before, and for like a ton of people who I know. What ideas do you have for musicians so they can be like more photogenic?
I mean, this is a pretty funny question. The first thing that you can do is just look up like your favorite, I don't know, for example, if you play viola, look up your favorite violist, and they always have several photo sessions because they're probably famous. So you can just see how they're holding the viola, see how what poses they're doing, and maybe like a little before the session, you can just take a quick look. Like don't spend more than 3 minutes seeing how, I don't know, whoever holds the viola and how they look in the picture, and then you can just go ahead and go a little prepared.
My experience with like taking photos has been like, if you try to look candid, or you try to look cool or relaxed, like you definitely won't.
Yeah.
Right. So like, what ideas do you have for like, if I'm the subject of a photo as a musician, like what ideas do you have for like, looking less weird, for lack of a better way to put it?
You gotta be, most of the times, the way to fix any weird posture or anything is you just gotta be relaxed. That's most of the time the solution. Then, unfortunately, is not 100% on you how you look in a photo, the photographer also needs to know what they're doing.
Right.
Obviously, if they pick a weird angle, unfortunately, it doesn't matter who you are. You might look a little
Right.
weird.
If you get a shitty photographer, like you could just be lost regardless of what you do.
Yeah, exactly. But most of the times, the way to fix if you feel like you look a little awkward in pictures is kind of think of like, I don't know, where if I just like drop my hand on my leg, that's where gravity wants me to put my hand. So there's no way that's gonna look too weird, you know? That's just where my hand goes. If I'm sitting down, my hand falls in there. That's where it falls.
I feel like it's like if not just in photography, but it's like if I tell someone to be relaxed and they're already not relaxed, I'm like, guys, just relax. Like, they're not gonna be relaxed.
So this is a bit of just a more practical tip. You just gotta, I don't know, put your shoulders kind of down a little bit, you know? Try to just feel comfortable physically, you know? That's the first step. Before you start feeling comfortable, like let's say mentally in that moment, you just kind of gotta like, I don't know, sit good, you know? That helps.
So Dave, what ideas or advice do you have for other musicians out there who might be considering either starting like a photography thing or I mean any side hustle for that matter?
I think you gotta do two very important things. Number one, start. And number two, go meet people. I think because, you know, Apple wouldn't exist if they didn't start, you know? And like, I mean, Steve Jobs was like, okay, I don't have a place, so I'll do it in my garage, I guess, you know? And I feel like a lot of people would be like, you know, I don't want to start my little thing on a garage. That's so lame, you know? But if Apple wouldn't have started there and that little garage wouldn't be what it is now, you know?
Yeah.
If Steve Jobs wouldn't have like went around and like, I don't know, meet people trying to get his little product out there, it would still probably not be anything.
Absolutely. And I feel like there's a certain thing to putting yourself, I'm trying to think of the best word for it. I mean, like, I'll give you an example here. Like, the way that I've gotten a lot of the people to come on the podcast has been one of two things. Like, DMing people who I don't know, who I kind of know, or I've literally got people on, like, from being like, okay, I'm going to go downtown to the bar and see if there are other musicians there who are playing tonight who might be cool and I'll talk to them. Right? Like, and that has worked.
Exactly.
that has worked.
That also worked for me with pictures. When I was just starting, I was like, dang it, I already did a few sessions. Like I did 3 or 4 sessions. Now how do I get more sessions, you know? And so I started, me as the photographer, I started just texting my friends saying like, hey, I think you need new photos. Like in a funny way, you know, I wouldn't be mean to anybody like that. But like, you know, I would just be like, hey, do you want new photos? I've been taking pictures. Do you want them?
Like,
and like incredibly, most of the time people said, yeah, that's actually a great idea.
One of the things that I found like with asking people to come on the podcast, which is sort of similar to that, is like at first, you know, you're kind of nervous. You're like, oh man, like what if this person doesn't want photos, or like, you know, what if this person doesn't want to come on and they just like think that like the stuff that I'm doing is like dumb and bad. That's never what happens. Like everyone who I've asked has been like almost like flattered. Even people who I've been like, okay, like this person is objectively better than me or more experienced than me. They've been like, oh, like thanks, man. Like I'm really looking forward to it. I'm so honored. And I'm like, yeah, kind of thing, right? And I guess like for you, it's like, you know, you'd be like, oh man, like, you know, what if this person like thinks that what I'm doing is like stupid and wrong, and but like that, has that ever actually happened?
It actually has not happened, but if it has happened, I think it's important to remember that literally the worst thing that can happen to you is that the person says no, or like they ghost you.
Yeah.
But like that's kind of on them. I mean, I didn't do anything, you know?
Yeah,
like, obviously, you don't have to be like, hey, get pictures with me, get pictures with me, get pictures with me.
Oh, yeah, you don't want to piss people off.
Exactly, but if I just go with like if I just text them saying like, hey, do you I've been doing pictures, are you interested? If they say yes, that means you got a new client. And if they say no, that is absolutely, completely okay. And again, this all ties back to the idea of starting things.
Yeah.
Because when you have like a little thing on the side, and even in music, only when you're really famous, people are going to call you, you know?
Yeah. No one's like seeking you out. Like no one is seeking Eric Shepard out to do music. Like I need to be out there grinding, and I mean that's probably the case for like 99% of people, I'm assuming, are going to be in that same boat where it's like, okay, you're not going to get the opportunities that you want to get unless you're out there either convincing people that you're the guy for the job or like creating the job.
You got to evaluate if you can do what you think what you're saying that you can do.
Yeah.
And then maybe just send them a message. You really just gotta take the initiative. It's like this is a kind of a weird example, but if nobody took the initiative to cook, I would have eaten only the times that people invited me for dinner.
Yeah.
And it's really similar to getting new clients in a business or something like that. You have to give them the invitation, if that makes sense.
Well, I think that that's so right, and like a really transferable thing to a lot of music stuff, right? Because like if you're a pianist, and it's like, okay, there's like a museum or an event that might want a piano player that maybe hasn't considered it, and you go and reach out to them, kind of thing, and just kind of like slide in there to set yourself up. There realistically may not be other people doing that, right? Like there'd be lots of things that could have music that didn't have music. I think it's also something that's so true for like choir, and especially doing like traditional choral repertoire that like doesn't really get done that much, right? It's like so often like Dave sings in the cathedral choir with me, like we both sing in that choir, and we do a lot of repertoire that wouldn't normally get done, that it's like if we weren't doing that repertoire, no one would be doing that repertoire, right? So often it's like if you don't do it, no one will.
Yeah, this just reminded me of another thing that I used to do when I just started the little photo thing. One day I was like, okay, again, I did a few sessions by this time already, but I'm thinking, how can I get more people to get pictures with me? Mm-hmm. So I went to every single restaurant downtown and took a picture of their like outside, from the street. Every single restaurant downtown. And then I gathered a list with every single one of their emails. And then I send them the picture that I took saying like, hey, this is your restaurant. Use this picture however you want. If you want more pictures, just let me know, But I feel like that kind of initiative is the one that can get you really, really far. In fact, a lot farther than what you can even think at first. Yeah. And I think, for example, I could have easily done this as well with piano. I could have been looking for every single restaurant downtown. I could have gotten their emails and saying, hey, look, there's a video of me right here, playing piano. Are you interested? And 99.9% are going to say no, or they're not even going to answer. But that one single one that said yes
could be a great opportunity.
Exactly. Yeah. That's how you start. And then now in your resume, you have pianist at the restaurant.
Well, and that's the thing, right? It's maybe a cliche, but it's actually I've found to be so true. Is like success breeds success, right? It's like if you go and right, like you could have say you approach 10 restaurants or 10 events to play piano, just like to be the guy playing some jazz piano in the background, right? If you approached 20 people, say, and one of them got back to you, you could make that look like a huge win by like being like, I'm that guy who's doing that thing. And then the next time you go back and follow up with people, right? Because I mean, the first time someone says no in business stuff, that's oftentimes not the end of the relationship, right? Yeah. The next time that you go and follow up with people, you have that thing, like, the resume, sure, but like it's also an example of your work to say, hey, here's the value that I can create, what I bring to the table, and the vision for what I have of what we could do here. And then, it's one thing to say that to people, but it's another thing to show that, to say, okay, this is what we did, in this case study, and here's what you could have.
Yeah, in fact, another thing just came to my mind. Out of all the restaurants I took pictures for downtown, which was every restaurant, and I sent their picture on their email, I was really lucky. The two biggest ones were the ones that answered me back, Yeah. Which I was not expecting at all, But it just happened. And those things, those things happen.
Yeah. No. Oh, there's so many excuses like to not do stuff. But the better way to think of it is like most people are probably like falling for those things. Right. Yeah. So often, like most people are not out here grinding in the way that you could. And if they are, you can do more. right? Like, I don't know. I feel like that might be like the like workaholic in me, but like, yeah, I don't know. I believe that. And I feel like that is how you actually, if you are trying to compete against people in that sense, like, you can always outwork someone.
I think I'm also lucky because in Latin America, Latin Americans are known for being really, really great workers. And I've seen this because I'm from there, you know? For example, I just think of my dad, and it's like he was doing stuff all the time, absolutely all the time. He was helping people, he was doing this thing, and then immediately after he was doing this other thing, just because he wanted to do it, he wanted to help out people. And, so I think I was also really lucky to kind of have that, I don't know, that just like, it's a little bit of like a little push.
Like for me, when I was a kid, sort of similarly to that, which I think my parents were different from a lot of people in this regard, was they never let me be like bored, right? They never let, like, if there was like there was never a weeknight where I wasn't like involved in either music or sports or like some sort of extracurricular activity. So like I think that what that did was it gets you used to being busy. And so, like, I get uncomfortable when I'm not busy now as an adult, which, I mean, I'm sure there's some people who might be like, oh, no, like, you need to kick back. I'm like, no, like, I actually don't like doing that. Like, I want to have lots of stuff to do, right? And I think that is a really valuable thing to develop because, you end up, if there aren't projects or aren't things on the go, you end up either finding them or making them, which, I think as well, like, we've talked a lot about creating opportunities for yourself, but one of the things that I've learned about doing composition sing-throughs with choristers or like organizing choir performances kind of thing, like on my own, like going out and like doing those things, is that like you're not just creating opportunities for yourself, like you actually create opportunities for other people, right? And I feel like that is something that like I've learned recently, right? Is like I always think about, okay, how can I get people to want to work with me? And it's like, no, like a lot of the times the projects that you do can be unique or different things to what people normally do, or you're getting people at times when they don't have anything on the go and are looking for stuff to do. Absolutely. Right? Like it's I think that like we don't really think about that enough, right? It's often, okay, what can I get out of a situation, or how can I develop, or how can I become a better musician? And it's like, you don't need to be like a music teacher per se to like give other people opportunities. It's like, no, if you just create projects that other people want to get in on, like you've created opportunities for other people.
Yeah, true. Absolutely.
Well, Dave, this has been a great discussion. Before we wrap up here, what thoughts or ideas do you want to leave people with?
Especially people in situations like mine, where you come here, you look around, and you don't see one person that you know.
Yeah.
You gotta start getting to know those people that you see. That's the way to do it. And once you know a few people, everything starts kind of falling into their places. Obviously, you gotta be wise and kind of realize which people you have to hang out with and which people you don't. But once you know the people that you want to hang out with, then you can start doing some hard work on the things that you really, really want to get onto.
Well, Dave, this has been a great discussion. Thank you so much for coming on regarding music. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Oh, no worries. Anytime.